You're listening to Investify, preaching financial independence and assisting investors to achieve a more flexible and free lifestyle through smart financial planning and real estate investing. If leaving the corporate world and jumping into this thriving industry is what you desire, tune in and listen to stories of like-minded individuals who made the leap to financial independence. Equip yourself with the right tips and tricks to start your real estate journey, making active or passive ventures that are highly profitable and rewarding.
What's going on, everybody? You are listening to Investify. My name is Craig Curlop, aka the Fi Guy, and I'm here with my co-host, Miss Allie Garcet. What up, Allie?
I am in the new house. As you can see, I'm currently recording in the kitchen, literally barefoot in the kitchen. But everything is fine. I'm still getting my studio in order.
You know, Allie, what that tells me about you? It tells me that you can take the heat because you are in the kitchen.
Ooh.
That's what you should just tell people. It's like, yeah, you like, why am I not in the kitchen? Well, I can't take the heat, so I'm in a shop here, right? I'm in a home DIY built office that looks good from your perspective, but that's it. So, uh, uh, awesome. So you're moved in, right? Everything's all good. Was that smooth?
It was smooth. Oh yeah. I mean, when you pay for a moving company, we got a really good one. I looked at a lot of Yelp reviews because that's the type of person that I am, and it was great. But we left the old place furnished, so therefore the only furniture that we brought to this place was our bed. So we don't have a couch. We have this rolly chair for my, like very, very minimal. So we'll be purchasing furniture very slowly, but I love that, there's really no price on security, like and feeling safe at home.
Oh, absolutely. And so now you're renting your unsafe place?
It is, well, we will get to that. It'll be short term. Um, although, so it's just north of the U of A. It's very it's a lot of people live in, that area and are totally fine. Um, the issue was the garage. Both Britt and I didn't both put our cars in the garage. So,
Mhm.
and that's because we had just, too many boxes. But once the new tenants put both of their cars in the garage, it's gonna be fine.
I see. Okay. I was gonna say, like, this sounds like a property you might want to sell instead of like having other tenants be unsafe and all that.
Oh, and I disclose everything. I will like never keep anything a secret. I would rather over disclose and have people turn away as opposed to me lie about anything and, getting caught later on.
Totally. That's a good characteristic to have. Um, Speaking of great characteristics, we've got Mr. Dan Austin on the show today, and he's got a lot of great characteristics, especially his soothing voice that is very nice. Everyone likes to hear Dan talk. But Dan's got such an incredible story that kind of like I feel like there's like a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? The beginning was like, hey, he was like house hacking and doing this rent by the room thing. And then the middle was like, oh, let's get some better deals with wholesaling. And then, oh, let's like really scale this thing up. And so Dan talks a lot about a lot of stuff about just his first deal. And he goes really, and how his first deal leveraged into what he has today. And so one thing that I think my favorite quote is like deals that Dan said that I don't think he realized he said was that deals 5 years ago on the MLS are great deals today. And so 5 years from now, where do you think the great deals in the MLS are? Right? They're here and they're today. So just the story is, right? We keep saying it. Just keep buying. You are not going to regret buying real estate that works today because this is going to be the worst it's ever going to be.
No, I completely agree. I mean, and you even tell your story on this podcast about your 8%. You are making properties work with 8% interest rate. And, the running meme or the joke is that our grandparents back in the day bought, properties for like $5 and like a pack of strawberries, but it was expensive for them back then, relatively, it was still expensive for them. So of course we're gonna look now and be like, oh, we should have purchased, back in 1920s. That was still expensive at that time. It's that same feeling, So I don't know. I'm a huge believer of also continuing to buy. It's what I just did. Um, I'm thinking like purchasing new builds right now is the way to go, at least in this market. I'm in Tucson, Arizona.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, we'll get off our soapboxes and let's get Mr. Dan Austin onto the show.
Are you coming to BPCon this year? If so, make sure to go to thefiteteam.com/BPCon to sign up for this free dinner at Bahama Breeze from 6 to 9 p.m. on October 16th. This is going to be a 100% free dinner. We just want to get everybody from the Investify community and the house hacking and Fi Team community together all in one place. Now, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get everybody. Seats are extremely limited. So be sure to go to thefiteteam.com/BPCon, fill out a form, and we'll let you know within 24 to 48 hours before the event whether or not you've got a seat at the table. Thanks so much, and we'll see y'all there.
Dan Austin, welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing today, dude?
I'm doing good. You're coming in with that energy. We call that on the on the Collecting Keys podcast. We call that Big Dan energy, the BDE.
Big Dan energy, BDE. All right. Well, you got to provide it back then, right? This is just going to be
I'll try.
A bunch of Big Dans on here.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Things
Over
are going
here
well, man.
BCE. It's
BCE.
Big Craig energy.
Oh, BC, Big Craig energy. I'm going to get a shirt made for you, Craig.
Yeah, well, you know what I call it here? It's called BAE, aka Bay, like Big Alley energy.
God, nice.
Or
Now
Bay.
we're spiraling already.
I like
We're spiraling? Yeah, okay. All right, Dan. Who the heck are you, Dan? And tell us kind of where did you first hear about financial independence?
Oh, yeah. So now I got to go way back. So who am I? I'm kind of, I don't want to call myself a contrarian thinker, but I seem to make large pivots in my life away from whatever that group I'm working with at the time is doing. So a little bit contrarian. As we talked about before the show, I was in the military. Same with Ali. Started out just as like a job. You know, I was left high school, went right in the military, 2004, did 8 years there, deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, did all that sort of stuff. And while I was in, I was thinking like, this is a fun gig for a young guy. I got to blow things up, jump out of airplanes, do all that really cool stuff that an adrenaline junkie like myself ever dreamed of doing. And I got to that point to where I thought I should probably do something different though. This might not be where I want to be financially for the rest of my life, or just kind of the career path that was there. Not that military is a bad career path. It just wasn't where I saw myself. So that was like that first spark of like, I maybe need to do different than what this group of people's doing. And my thought was get out of the military, go to college, get a degree, because that's what you're supposed to do. I had the GI Bill, and that was the main reason I left the military. And, I thought that with that degree, I'd get a high paying job because nobody in my family went to college. Like I'm in my direct family, the only person to do it. So I moved back home to Spokane, Washington, went to Gonzaga University, got an electrical engineering degree, and started that corporate path. Started out as an electrical engineer here locally, and again started saying this isn't the path I wanted. Like this group of engineers is not who I want to be with because I'm not an engineering type. But I ended up still getting a master's degree in electrical engineering, and right after I graduated my undergrad, and that didn't work for me.
You didn't want to be around electrical engineers, so you decided to get an electrical engineer degree to be around much smarter and way more, probably way more social electrical engineers, right? Like I think the further you get deeper in, the more social you get. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. The PhD was the next. That was going to be a party, right? Anyhow, so I did that, but literally within a year of practicing engineering, I was like, this is terrible, and nothing wrong with being an engineer. It's just not for me. And so then I pivoted my corporate career right into leadership. Leaving the military, I felt like I had a really good leadership background. I actually had some passion around just like leading teams, building things, building teams, building business, which came later. And anyhow, so I kind of pivoted into the leadership track, started going through middle management ranks, promoting and all that sort of stuff. Ended up getting a degree in a master's, an MBA from University of Washington. And then that was the pivot where I was like, this is super cool. Like I learned about business, but not the way like you would have thought, like the corporate, business was cool and all that, but that's right where I really realized this is absolutely my hard pivot. And leading up to that, I'll step back. I started investing in real estate. This was probably 2016. I started learning before that, just kind of like, hey, what do you do with extra money when you get it? Which I didn't have, previously, but started learning and bought a student rental right across the street from a university here in Spokane, literally right across the street. I didn't know how great of a deal it was at the time, but I bought that. And then I bought a second one. And that's where I started saying, like, this passive income thing is really cool. And that was like the spark of a thought.
So you stumbled on real estate by basically just Googling, what do you do with extra money? And real estate came up. And then, like, what learning did you do? Were you just on Bigger Pockets? Because Bigger Pockets was around then.
Yeah, I started listening to Bigger Pockets back when Josh was one of the hosts. And I probably started listening to Bigger Pockets like 2013-ish. And lightly, and I stumbled across their blog first, and I wasn't sure what that was going to be. I do know as a kid growing up, I always thought like, oh, people that owned property seem to have wealth. I didn't know what that meant though. And so I was in my exploration of investing, I was also looking at, stocks and some crypto stuff throughout this whole process. And the only one that was tried and true for me ended up being real estate. Not that I don't invest in other assets, but that really was the key one that sparked that financial freedom thought, because the Bigger Pockets, especially back then, being like, that was kind of the sole good, clean source that you could feel like you trusted on the internet to go and get some of this information. And hearing like Brandon's process and Josh's process of how they started building their portfolios, really thought, I was like, oh, I kind of have this idea. I want to be an entrepreneur. And there's a pretty low barrier to entry from an entrepreneur standpoint to get into real estate. Like, you just have to buy an asset and then learn and then run it like a business. That to me is entrepreneurship in its, simplest form when you step into real estate. So, I was investing, bought the house, started renting out to students, and I was cash flowing really well. I was like, this is badass. I got to do this 10 times. And that was my initial goal.
All right, Dan, before we get too far ahead, Allie, you can kind of feel what time this is?
It is the year is 2016, and it's time for the
For real.
The
For
real deal.
Bump. All right, Dan, this is the first deal that you ever done, and we want to kind of get into the nitty gritty of it. And so you mentioned it was a student rental across from a university in Spokane. I'm gonna throw a. Is it Gonzaga University, or is there another university in Spokane?
No, it was Whitworth University. So even smaller private university than Gonzaga.
Okay. So right across the street from Whitworth University. And so tell us a little bit about it. So you bought it in 2016. What'd you buy it for? How did you finance it? All the juicy details.
Yeah. So it was it was listed on the MLS. It was listed for $205,000. I think 204 and 900. So it was a great deal actually at the time, but I financed it with a 5% down conventional loan. My plan was to move into it because I lived just up the road in a, similar sized house, whatever. So my plan was to move into it and renovate the basement and add bathroom and all that sort of stuff. Because with student rentals, the more bedrooms, the more money. It's rent by the room pretty much. Anyhow, my now business partner, Mike DeHaan, we weren't business partners at the time, but he was moving back to Spokane from the Seattle area, and he needed a place to live. And so I ended up like saying, hey, you could just live in the upstairs for free while I renovate this. And then he was going to move on, and it was all going to work out. So anyways, I never actually moved into it. So that's kind of my intention was to, but it was, I don't want to say I committed mortgage fraud or anything like that, but that was kind of like what it felt like at the time. And so anyhow, he moved into it. I personally fixed up the basement myself. I ended up, between the down payment and the renovations, I had $30,000 out of pocket, just under that. And then I was renting it at the time for $2,100 a month to 6 students.
Wow. Okay. So $30,000 of down payment plus renovations, which added a bedroom and a bathroom. So I'm just thinking, that sounds like about $10,000 in down payment and closing costs, plus another $10,000 in renovation. So how did you do that for so cheap?
Just doing it myself, right? The key to the down payment was, like I had mentioned earlier, it was I think it was exactly five. I think it was $10,000 and then like a couple thousand in closing costs, right? Obviously, normally that would have been a 25% down payment. I would have been way out of pocket. In fact, I did that on my next house. Um, so that was the one big thing. And that's basically the house hack, right? The only difference is I ended up not moving into it like I had told the bank I was going to. Again, wasn't trying to do anything illegal. That's just how it worked out. And then the renovations, I just did it myself. And I was like, I'm just going to learn how to do this stuff. And so YouTube University did everything, drywalled it all, plumbed it all, which thank God none of the plumbing's leaked yet. I've kind of worried about it because I'm not a plumber, but I did it all. And it worked out great. I still rent it today and it's not falling apart yet. But really that doing the work myself saved me a ton of money because I didn't know what I didn't know back then. So I didn't know exactly what needed to get done. Right. So I could have had a contractor come in and I would have said, I just need a bathroom here, this or that, whatever. And they would have come in and it would have cost me a lot of money. But I also wanted to have known exactly the best way to do things because they would have just come in and done it whatever way they thought they needed to do it.
Yeah, I think that's really important when you're first starting out to kind of like, you got to get your hands dirty, right? I know people are like, oh, just do what you're do what you're worth, right? And if you can pay someone $20 an hour to get it done, then just do that. But man, it is really helpful to actually know what you're talking about, to be able to talk to contractors later. And also, like, you would have probably spent 20 to 30 grand on that rehab instead of just 10. So huge deal, man. So appreciate that. And so you mentioned you were getting 2,100 in rent. So what is that? Is that 300 a room with 7 rooms, or?
It was, God, what was that? I think it was 6 bedrooms. So it was like $350 a bedroom, I think is what it ends up being. So when I do my student rentals, I do a little differently. I don't do it rent by the room. I advertise it basically cost per room. But I make them all sign the same lease. And so that avoids like random move outs because people don't get along or they want to change their living accommodations. Basically, they're all 6 for that house. They're all liable for the exact same amount of money. Every one of them's supposed to pay me $2,100 total, basically. So that actually helps reduce the work.
So like if you're doing a rent by the room, right? We don't really I don't do that. I have separate leases for each house. At least I did when I was doing rent by the room. So, but for a student rental, I could see why that might be more appealing. Can you explain why you do it that way, where you put everyone on the same lease?
Yeah, so there's a couple reasons. One is, college students at that age, they're all just trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure life out. They might think they're friends with somebody that they're not, or they might think they want to live in a house with other people and they realize I'd rather just be in an apartment by myself, or they quit school and they move back home, whatever it is. There just seems to be that opportunity in that part of their life because a lot of times, so at this university, you have to be a junior. So they're usually about 20 or 21 years old when they're moving out off of campus. So that's kind of that age where they're starting to make more and more decisions on their own and they're not always the best. So putting them all on one lease makes it so that I don't have to collect rent 6 times. I have them all, they all understand that, hey, if somebody moves out, you're still, the other 5 people have to make up for that person's rent. So make sure that you either backfill them and come to me with a sublease, or you guys just figure it out how to pay it with 5 people. And I've never had a single problem with them paying rent because of that. I'm very clear upfront with that. And then the other thing I used to do, I don't do as often anymore, just because sometimes it can be challenging, is I would have like a co-signer, like a parent that co-signs it. And then that parent tends to make sure that they're all whipped into shape, because if they're going to be the co-signer on it, then they're, and the other thing is with this university, a lot of their parents are well-to-do because it's expensive, and a lot of them are lawyers. So they make sure that everything's tight.
So with the parents, how many parents do you get involved, and who do you choose? Which students' parents do you talk to?
So here's what I try to do anytime I'm working with students, because I'm trying to make my life easier, because I want income to be as passive as possible. And we know real estate, depending the degrees of passivity, are up to you as the landlord. So I basically say, hey, there's a spot on here that says parent guardian signature. Figure it out. Someone that has a parent needs to sign that. And that's how they'll do it. They'll work it out. And it'll usually be the parent that's most willing to do it. And like I said, a lot of their parents, like I've almost every year, at least one parent's a lawyer. And that's sometimes the one that signs it, and they'll review the lease word for word and all that sort of stuff. And I'm fortunate because I've gotten compliments that my leases are really not one-sided. They're really mutually beneficial to everybody. And lawyers that have reviewed it said, yeah, this is actually a good lease. I'd let my daughter sign this.
Mm, yeah. So then you talk to them, I presume, like over the phone, like a conversation. You pretty much vet the parent as well.
I don't vet the parent. I just, most of the times they end up wanting to call me. And with these student rentals, because that's one segment of my portfolio, and I still continue to manage them myself because they're kind of unique. I'm pretty involved. And so even like on move-in days, I'll go down there and the parents are always moving their kids in, and there's some excitement around it. And so I usually will meet the parents, or at least a good portion of the parents. And I think that helps establish a strong relationship with them, which also trickles down through their kids, because if their kids are like, oh, my landlord refused to come down and clean out the garbage disposal, then their parents are like, well, that's just BS. Well, when they meet me, they see I'm actually not a bad landlord. Like, they're thinking in their head immediately that someone that's just going to take money from their kid or them via their kid, and not take care of the property. They see me, they meet me, they see the properties are well taken care of. They see I care about them and the student's experience. And I think that just makes it a better experience. And I'll caveat all this with, this university I rent to is a private Christian university, and it's very small, maybe 3,000 students. So it draws a certain demographic or type of people to that too, where they would want that kind of interaction.
Gotcha. I find it interesting that a lot of leases will specifically say in the lease that if someone moves out, like you cannot sublease this. Like I have to be the one that vet it. I'm the one that owns the property. I need to know who's moving in. And you intentionally don't have that. And I mean, you mentioned, trying to make this as passive as possible. That's pretty risky, I think. What's your like philosophy behind that?
So they still have to sign a lease. So if they're going to sublease it, they still have to sign a lease with me. And I say the only requirement I have, if there's 5 other people in the house, all 5 people have to agree to that person living there. If you don't have that agreement, then you can't sublease it to that person. And usually they're, like I said, this is a small private Christian university. They're all pretty dang honest. I haven't had this issue. If I went to, Gonzaga University, where I graduated from, it might be a little different, but they're usually pretty good about that. And they're all incentivized for this person to be a good person. So they kind of like take care of themselves a little bit. But anyhow, that's never been a problem for me. I still do sign the lease with them. At least I don't usually, I'm trying to think of the last time if I've met them in person. They are required to be a student of the university there. So there's that requirement as well. They can't be a Joe Schmo, I make that a requirement too. But here's the benefit, as well as with this whole situation. A lot of people that rent student rentals, they think of it as like a 9-month rental and then like a 3-month summer rental. I don't do that. I sign leases for 12 months, whether they're there or not. You have to pay for 12 months. And so then what happens is always inevitably half the people that live in the house are subleasing in the summer, or they're subleasing in one of the semesters because they're traveling abroad for their, semester in Italy or whatever. And so there's always the need for that. And so I keep the option open, and as a cultural thing at the university. Would I do it differently at another university? Very well, maybe.
Very cool, man. I love how structured and how much thought you've put into just like this whole student rental game, especially because it's just a part of your portfolio. It's not even your main thing. It's just kind of how you started. But let's kind of just talk real quick numbers again, just to recap. So you were getting $2,100 in rent. What was the mortgage payment on that?
The mortgage payment on that first one, I think it was like $1,050. PITI.
Okay, so you're making over $1,000 over the mortgage. Maybe you're at $600-700 after you take out some expenses and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think after, because I paid water and sewer. I think I was at like under $100 for that. So I was like $1,200 all in on all of my expenses. And then I think I budgeted like $200 or $300 for maintenance and stuff like that a month. So I was like, holy crap! I think it was like $800 a month. I was like, this is crazy. That's how much I'm cash flowing. I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, and that's amazing, right? And so I guess and that was in 2016, right? And so where is it at today? Because you said you still own it, right?
I still own that one, and I'll talk about it in pairs because I own the one right next to it. Which was another whole situation of how that happened. One of my students that was renting from me, she was going to seminary and was just a sweet young lady. And part of her, just being in seminary was she just really took care of the community and built really great relationships with people in the community. And she had built a relationship with the neighbor next door. And she was probably in her mid 80s, and walked her to the mailbox, all that sort of stuff. Anyways, the lady next door passed away. The student said, I bet you Dan would want to take care of this house and buy it from the family. And so I worked out my very first off market deal, not knowing that's what off market was, negotiated that price. So I bought that one right next door to it. So right a year later. So when I say I talk about it in pairs, like that's my 2 student rentals right next door to each other across from the university. And that thing that's like, it's one asset. I think about it as like a apartment with 12 doors, basically, that way. Now, I can't remember, what was your question before I went on that total spiral downward?
I just wanted to know kind of what that, like, I wanted to kind of know like the progression. So even both those houses, right? Like you started off at $350 a room. Your mortgage payment, I'm guessing, is probably staying the same. So what is your rent now on that?
So good question. That's why I brought that up. So interestingly enough, I basically did not do the BRRRR on either of those because I didn't know really. I didn't understand the BRRRR at the time and the value of it. I was just kind of very conservative, put my money into it. I got to put this money somewhere anyways. Cash flow will be better. I was really focused on cash flow. And then I think it was early last year, or the end of 2021, maybe, I did a cash out refinance on both houses. I went and found an online mortgage company that had the best rates, which were not better. So my rates on both those houses were under 3.5%. So it's pretty sweet. Refinanced both of them. Didn't max out my equity at all. I think I'm still like at a 60% equity on them, but I cashed out about $250,000 from both of them combined. And that increased to I think I'm at like a 5 or 6% interest rate on them. So not super great. I'm hoping to refinance those again in the future. But now my rents from 2,100 have moved up to 3,000. So in that same time frame, I moved rents up, basically $900 ish. And we still have some room to grow. We've been kind of behind in this little student rental bubble. So hopefully in the next 2 years, that'll be up to like 3,300.
So I just want to mention something here too, right? People are always scared when you initially get into a deal, especially right now with the higher interest rates. And I think, right, like it's not like right now when you buy is the worst the property is ever going to perform, ideally, right? In most scenarios, because your mortgage payment's going to stay the same or slightly go up with your refinance, or, and your rents are going to go up. And so if you hadn't refinanced, right, you were already cash flowing, let's say $600-700 a month. Add another $900 a month on top of that, and now you're cash flowing $1,500 to $2,000. And so like that is insane for one house, and that is just in a 6-7 year time period. And so that's what, like, people always come to me like, oh, like, aren't you scared of the interest rates now? Are you buying? It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, what matters is 5 or 6 years from now when you've got a property cash flowing you $2,000 a month and $250,000 in equity in it.
Yep.
Right.
I agree. I'm always a buyer, right? I'm always a buyer and I'm always a seller, to be honest. Like, and to your point, if the interest rates are high now, and you can still make a deal work from a cash flow perspective, I say do it. And I invest in a couple ways. I invest for appreciation, so I can cash out $250,000 in a handful of years. And I invest for cash flow, which is defensive, in my opinion. It's a defensive metric, especially if you're in an appreciation market. Now, if I was investing somewhere else that's more the Midwest or Southeast, where it's more of a cash flow market, I would be looking differently at that, because that's purely a cash flow play, in my opinion. But where we're at on the West Coast, it's definitely appreciation is a big play, but you can still get cash flow in this market. And so if I can buy a property today that has at least break even cash flow after set asides, after being conservative with my maintenance and repairs, then I'm okay with that, as long as it's a good solid property in today's market, because that's going to be a good solid property in tomorrow's market, which means it'll go up in value.
Yeah, I just want to say, so we bought a property in Coeur d'Alene last year. And so for those that don't know, Spokane and Coeur d'Alene are neighboring cities. They're like 30 minutes away. So basically the same city. And we got like an 8% interest rate. Right? It's like the rates are not good, right? But like the way the house is, I'm like, I think we can still cash flow this, like just barely. And so now it's all said and done. our mortgage payment is about 3,100. We're getting it's a split unit where it's a 4-bed, 2-bath on one side and a studio on the other. And so we're getting, I think, 1,500 or so for the studio, and then what is it, 3,000 for the 4-2. So it's 4,500 on a $3,100 mortgage. I'm like, oh dang, like this thing is making over $1,000 over the mortgage at an 8% interest rate, right? After property management and all that, like it goes down, and we pay utilities, so it goes down to probably about 500-600 a month. But still, like I'm just like, yeah, this is gonna be a great deal, and we're in like downtown Coeur d'Alene,
Yeah, that's a play that's always going to benefit you. And when you can go refinance, it's going to be amazing. And what I didn't start out investing thinking about refinance. So I have a philosophy on my properties. One is I don't buy properties forever. I don't plan to own any of my properties forever. Now, my student rentals, I'm going to own them as long as my kids want to participate within them, because I bought basically both of them for my 2 kids. I have a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old. They each have a house now. Kind of stole that from Brandon Turner. I thought that was a great model because I want to teach them the entrepreneurship, real estate investing, all that good stuff, hard work ethic, because they're going to be managing them and taking care of them so we don't have to. And then they're going to reap the rewards of the value of those properties when they turn 18. But that's like maybe the only 2 that I'll plan to keep forever. 7 years tops probably is what I look at. Or I look at 7-year cycles of how I'm going to buy and sell properties. Now, does that mean if I've owned a property 7 years, I'm going to sell it? No, but I might look at refinancing it. And when I started, like I mentioned, I didn't think about refinancing because I was like, man, if I had 10 paid off properties and I was making $2,000 a month off of each of them, 20 grand, that's so much money. That'll be awesome. Now I think about it in terms of what's my return on equity. And that's why I did that cash out refinance on those 2 student rentals, because I had such a large opportunity cost that I was missing out on by keeping that equity there. So what I did with that money right away, I just rolled it in. We have a hard money company called Sir Lancelot. So I just rolled that money right into that fund, earning myself 9%, which is our preferred return for investors. Rolled it right into that and let it sit there. And I was already making up more than the cash flow I was missing. And then I was able to take that money and also reinvest it elsewhere into other higher return assets at the time. And so for me, I look at that, I say, what can I do with my money now that's going to grow? Because 10 paid off properties is cool, but 20, like 50% paid off properties is quite similar, but over a longer period of time, that equity growth is magnified. So I look at it that way. And then I also look at the tax benefits. And as you're depreciating these properties, say you carry it out, you pay the mortgage off for 30 years and you've depreciated to 0. If you're not going to 1031 that money, you've got a pretty big tax hit, of course, or you have to 1031 it right away. And you have like major capital things that can happen to these properties, like a roof, a furnace, that over time can be costly. So if you can buy a property, get into it, do any major renovations at the beginning, burr that money back out, and then sell it right before major renovations have to happen again, I feel like that's a big win, because A, it's a lot of headache and work to do major renovations, and B, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, no, I love that philosophy, man. No, and that's interesting. The 7-year cycle thing. You kind of just reevaluate after 7 years. If the property is just, if you don't think about it and it's just a cash flow, and you're like, oh crap, I still have this property and it's doing well. It's kind of just that time to reflect on it. Like, is it time to sell? What's the return on equity like? And that's an important metric that seems to be lost on. Like I guess I did refinance my property from my first one, and but I didn't cash out refi. I just did a term so I can get the PMI off and get a lower interest rate and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, I do have a lot of equity in that property, but like the cash flow is so good. I'm just like, I can't. It really hurts.
Well, and I might take that situation because I still think that's okay. Like I said, cash flow is a defensive metric, and I look at, I have a portfolio of properties, so I look at it at a portfolio level, and can my portfolio absorb any big issues or major problems that happen? Yes, in most cases I can absorb those issues, so I can max out certain properties on others. But what I might also do when I say that reassessment is I might say, gosh, I got a lot of equity. It's time to get a HELOC on this property so that I can temporarily use that money to invest. Maybe it's to flip a house. Maybe I have enough, HELOC money that I can go pay cash, be a cash buyer on a house, a flip project, save a lot of money from the hard money perspective. Maybe I'm going to pay 9% interest only for 3 or 4 months, but that's better than having to go get a hard money loan, pay the points, pay 12% interest only, blah, 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 blah. And I can go reasonably fast and move quickly, which usually lets you have some negotiating power in those off market deals. And then you maybe get a $30,000 profit on the back end of that flip. Now you just created $30,000 from equity that was normally trapped that you don't have to pay reoccurring interest on. So like that's another exit or another option I assess on my properties too, is like HELOC or refinance or sale.
One thing that I've had some troubles with, and maybe you have too, is like getting HELOCs on investment proprities. It's not really as easy as like everyone says it is. So like,
No.
where do
So
you go
hard.
to find it? Yeah.
Yeah. So we have, I will say there's a couple relationships as a real estate investor you need to have. If you're doing off market, like wholesale real estate, like we do, title company is probably one of the number one. Number two is a banking relationship. So we have a private banker that we work with at a local credit union here. It's not the small credit union. It's a mid-size, I would say mid-sized credit union. So they have enough assets on their balance sheet that they can actually kind of play around with some of their numbers and help people out. So we have a private banker. His sole job is to make us happy. And so we have a great relationship with him, and we give him most of our business. And we've done probably in the last couple of years, 20 loans through him. You know, he gets commission for all the work he does with us. And so like he's incentivized for us to do well. And so that helps. And what that means is he can go to the banking board, which they have, like where they take assessments of projects that don't meet their typical say yes. He can go and lobby for us on our behalf and say, hey, look at these guys. They've done 20 loans with us in the last 12 months. These guys have X amount sitting in deposits. They have these products with us, these products with us. These are good, solid people. They've never missed a payment, whatever. He can take that higher risk, what they would call it, because bankers are really they're just always assessing risk. That's all they care about is what's the risk to their balance sheet and against their investment. You know, what is their investment strategy? So if they're not a real estate investing bank, they're probably not going to be a good bank for you to go bank with, right? Because that's always going to be against their strategy. So what we do with him, and when we first started banking with him, I was like, hey, I want to get a HELOC. He's like, dude, that's a bad idea. I'm like, why? He's like, well, because we're going to charge you $1,000 for every property that we're going to do it on. We have to do it against each individual property. We're not going to do it against the portfolio. And he just gave me all these reasons why we couldn't do it. And I was like, okay, well, I guess it's not as easy as they say on the podcast, just like you said, right? But in time, in building that relationship and building up good equity, what we can do is usually 75 to 80% of the equity we can have access to. Now we're going to have to do that annually, which means we're going to have to pay for an appraisal fee, which thank God they're going down now to like maybe for like a single family home, like $600 or $700 for an appraisal fee. But if you have, a house that is worth $450 and the equity in it's like 200,000 or whatever, your note's 200,000, so you got 250 in equity, you can get probably 75 to 80% of that equity, which is not like a primary. Like my primary, they'll give me 90% of the equity. Easy, no problem. But because I have that long-standing relationship with this banker, and his job is to help keep us happy, he's willing to lobby on our behalf, we are able to get that. So I agree with you, it's not easy, but it is a strategy that as you stick in the game and you prove longevity, those things start opening up to you.
Awesome. Cool.
We hope this episode is inspiring you to take action. If you're thinking about becoming a real estate agent or an agent who wants to join an investor-friendly team, just hit me up on Instagram at @TheFi because we are growing our team in Denver, Seattle, San Diego, and Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, but also adding to our network in all 50 states. And if you didn't already know this, the Fi team provides a super supportive environment with one-on-one coaching, accountability, and ongoing training to help develop kick-ass, rock star, investor-friendly real estate agents. So hit me up on Instagram at @TheFi, shoot me a DM, and we'll set up a time to chat. Can't wait to chat with you.
Dan, this has been really insightful kind of for this, this first round of properties that we went in, and we went pretty deep, which is awesome. And I think it just shows how much that first property can do for you in terms of cash flow, in terms of like legacy with your kids, and you leverage the equity into other things. And so let's jump ahead a little bit. Where are you at? Like, what kind of came next for you?
Yeah, so that was about the point in time where, like I said, I went to get my master's in business and really take off in my corporate, climbing of the ladder, so to speak. And really, at that point, I started learning about business. I started meeting other people that were entrepreneurs in my MBA program, and I was like, these guys are pretty cool. I like these people. And then right around the time, that's right prior to COVID happening, and then 2020 happened, and my mind just started. I was like, okay, corporate America is not where I'm going to build my wealth. It's not where I'm. They're just the whole kind of my eyes opened up, right? And it was investing in those student rentals and starting to look at real estate as a way to have some sort of financial freedom. And then seeing that corporate America is not going to give me the financial freedom I want, but it can be used as a tool, right? It can provide elements of what I need to help build that financial freedom. And like I said, COVID happened. I think for a lot of people, there was an awakening during that period of time. If you worked in corporate America, I also joined GoBundance not too shortly after that. And so that also helped. But really what I did from there was I wanted to buy, I've got the blueprint. I want to buy 10 more of these. I want to keep going. Well, at the time I was like, I can't find any deals on the MLS, which looking back, I'm like, those were deals. I just didn't have the crystal ball to know what the future was going to be the next 5 years. So anyhow, my partner, Mike DeHaan, approached me at that time and said, hey, I've been kind of buying real estate. You've been kind of buying real estate. We both complain about not being able to get deals. Let's join forces and find deals off market. And I was like, okay, cool. Worst case scenario, I throw a bunch of money away and we don't go anywhere with it. Best case scenario, there's a asymmetrical upside, right? We find really good deals and we find lots of them. So then we came together and we formed a local real estate wholesaling business here in Spokane. And we ran that for couple years, doing very well, building our portfolio, buying everything from mostly single families. I think our largest that we actually own is an 8-unit that we bought while we ran that business. So I think we bought 40 units in 2 years, flipped a bunch of houses, wholesaled a bunch, did a couple hundred transactions basically. And that was really cool. And then we just started we started our podcast, Collecting Keys podcast. You should go check it out. It's pretty sweet, for fun. And that actually started getting some traction. People started listening and could you show us what you're doing? Yeah, we'll show you what you're doing. Kind of just simple stuff like that. But anyhow, what that turned into is what is the Collecting Keys brand, which is now where we do, we have 3 tiers. One is the coaching program where you come in and we show you how to do off-market real estate. The other one is we do it with you, which is where we'll do the marketing for you and you run your own sales to actually lock up properties. And then the third one is we do it for you. So basically you come to us, you pay us a fee. We will not only market in your market but we will also close deals for you and hand you contracts for discounted properties. That's kind of our highest we call it our pro tier. But that's where we pivoted and that's where we went to. And the reason why was because we wanted scale and we didn't just decide that's how we were going to do it. We started going virtual on our own. We started in Knoxville, Tennessee. We went to Chicago because we wanted more throughput in our business.
Awesome. Dude, this is so much to unpack here, right? And we probably don't even have enough time to unpack it all because so first off, right, you found a problem. There were no deals. That seems to be the problem every year forever. And so that's why I also think today the deals on the MLS are going to be deals a few years from now. And so it makes sense just to keep buying, of course. But if you want to find the best of the best deals, right, putting some money, putting some time in and creating a wholesaling business is something amazing. There's a lot of people that do that. But you took it a step further, right? You did it for a couple of years, you saw success, and you're like, okay, there's another problem is that other people want to do this. How do we help them achieve the same success? And so you created what's basically this wholesaling as a service model, which is, I don't know if anyone's else is doing it. Maybe they are.
I don't know anybody yet. I do not know anybody yet. Not that's doing it with the amount of value add that we are helping people.
Yeah. And so to get this straight, so let's say I'm from Topeka, Kansas, right? A random market that I'm just going to assume that you don't have anybody in yet. I would basically have and I wanted to start a wholesaling company, but I didn't really know how, right? It would make sense for me to go to you and learn it. If I was a young someone hustling, it would make sense to go to you to learn it. You can just kind of coach and teach us through it. But you also have a solution for someone let's say I'm a lawyer that's very busy, but wants to get into real estate investing and I want to get the best deals and I'm willing to pay I don't know, a couple grand a month or something to do that. You have a service for both parties, right?
Yeah, we have a service. We have basically three levels for everybody in between. And that was like, it's interesting because what you find in business is you're just solving problems. So the first thing was we were solving a problem of we wanted to do more deals. We're like, well, we're doing quite a bit here in Spokane, but like, what if we moved to Coeur d'Alene? What if we moved to Chicago? What if we moved to Knoxville? And we kind of picked these places that we thought would be great places. And we did well. I love the story of like when we first moved to Knoxville, we flipped a house down there that we got under contract just through our marketing. Flipped a house. I've never walked a house. I don't even remember what the address was. We made $30,000 on this flip. Just literally just kind of crazy. It blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, you can do this virtually. And it's partly because the real estate investing community, especially if you're part of a good tight community, whether that's through a mastermind group or group coaching program, is really trustworthy, and we can all we're working towards the same things. And so you can find good people in any market, right? So that was like the first problem we were trying to solve. And then the next problem, like I had mentioned, we were doing our podcast just kind of for fun, didn't really have like a product or anything we were trying to market, and people were coming to us like, oh man, it sounds like you guys are killing it. Like, which by the way, it always sounds like you're killing it when you're the host of the podcast, but it's still a grind, it's still a hustle, right? But people are like, oh, you guys are killing it. Can you show me how to do it? And then we did. And then what we found was there were some people that they're like, dude, I don't have time for this. Like, this is awesome. And I want access to the deals, but like, I don't want to do the data part. I don't want to do the marketing part. I just want to talk to sellers. And we're like, cool, let's do that. So then we got people where we're like, we'll just run your marketing systems for you and help you find the best deals. And then you can go and talk to the sellers, close deals all day long. There are a lot of times the real estate agents who then can convert them to listings if they don't want to sell off market. And then within that, we had even a smaller segment of people that were like, I don't even want to talk to sellers. I just have excess money and I need to invest it. I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, or I'm a more experienced real estate investor. Maybe you have a portfolio established already and you're trying to grow it a lot faster because now you know what you're doing and you're ready to take that next level and really grow. And those people are like, I don't want to do anything. I just want to look at it as an ROI, and I'm willing to take a slightly less ROI by paying for the higher service because I can do it at scale. So that's kind of like each step of the way, the problems we solved. And that's how we got to where we're at now.
I was going to ask, what type of marketing do you guys do to find these properties from out of state?
Yeah. So our bread and butter, we always say, is direct mail marketing. We also provide texting as well with ours. And this is such a fun conversation because I think people get so wrapped up around like, oh my gosh, I need to spend so much time designing my marketing. It's like, no, our whole like model for life and business is like, keep it simple and be consistent. The most important thing as real estate investors, we got to remember is consistency in how we own properties. You always win over the long term. You said it, Craig, deals on the MLS now or properties on the MLS now or deals in the future. Same thing with, marketing, like you got to be just as consistently going through it. And so what we do is we have a couple different types of mail we send every single month. And that's all we do is just send it. And then we'll be texting we'll text a broader net. So we're looking for distressed properties with our direct mail. We're looking for the same properties with our texting, but we'll go a little broader because texting is actually quite a bit cheaper per lead. But the quality of leads from mail is so much better. And people regularly are like, you can't buy properties by sending somebody a letter. And I promise you can. And there's a lot of people that do this. And so we proved it out locally in our market. And then we proved that we could do it virtually. And then we went virtual at scale. And so now we have like really good KPIs for what it should cost you per lead, what it should cost you per deal across the entire country. I think we've worked in almost every state at this point besides Alaska and Hawaii. I don't think we have anybody that's signed up for us in those states yet.
That's amazing. That's great. And so what's kind of next? So now you're kind of building, now it almost feels like the wholesaling, you buying properties is almost like you graduated from that. And now you're just building this business of helping other people wholesale and buy their properties. And so where do you want to take this business? You're just trying to scale it all over? Is your goal to like have people in all 50 states?
Yeah, so we're trying to get to 100 markets. That's like our next intermediate goal. And we're trying to, for us, this is an interesting thing. So there's less upside for us per deal because now we're doing it for other people, but we get some consistency in cash flow that we can forecast for our own personal investing, which is great. That's nice. But we have to look at properties differently now, because now we have become more of the people buying from other wholesalers as opposed to being the wholesalers when we're looking at properties to buy. Granted, we could go scale up a wholesaling business and just do it locally wherever market we want, and we may do that in the future. So we're still trying to buy real estate. But trying to get to 100 markets takes a business model that has to be scalable. So we've hired a business coach, and we're building out all these systems, hiring all the staff, growing our business, which is not what we thought about when we came into real estate. We thought we're just going to buy passive income. And now we're like, hey, wait, massive income is just as cool as passive income. And like, let's scale this business. And so when we say we want to be in 100 markets, we give people exclusivity to the zip codes they're in. Where like if you look at like a lot of lead generation companies, they'll just sell leads to whoever is willing to pay for them. So you might buy a lead for $100 and the guy next door to you bought the same exact lead. And so we don't do that. We just say, hey, if you're in this zip code of 99208, you're going to get exclusivity to any of the stuff in this zip code up to it. Like I think 200,000, I think is in our contract, 200,000 people in that single zip code. So we try to do that because we think that's a benefit for the clients. And so anyhow, the goal, to get to there. And then we're also looking at different verticals within our business. So like I mentioned earlier, we have a hard money lending business. So we're looking to scale that up a little bit bigger beyond just our money and bringing in some investor money, because it pairs really well with people that are buying a lot of properties, is they tend to need cash and they need it cash quickly. So we can help bridge, provide those bridge loans, provide those flipper loans, all those sorts of things to our clients and other people that we know, like, and trust. And so, we're not trying to blow it up and become a national lender, but, those people that are in our sphere and influence that, again, we know, like, and trust, we want to be able to lend to them. So that's another vertical we're going to scale. And anything else we need to solve problems.
It's another thing that I just kind of realized that you're doing is like you're solving the same person's problem. And I think that's really important too, because getting a person into your lead funnel and actually getting them to pay you is the hardest thing. Like that first pay, right? But if you can if they pay, you can pay them once. If they can pay you once, they'll pay you again for something else and again for something else and again for something else. And that's so much easier. And so I love what you're doing there too.
Well, it's so funny you bring that up, Craig. And you guys know this, right? Like, so as a real estate agent, getting people into your funnel, like the best clients are the repeat clients. So if you get somebody into your funnel to do a listing, like you need to do everything in your power to make sure that they have a great experience, because you will be the person they call when they list again, or when they go buy their second home, or when their mom needs to sell their property, right? So getting that repeat business is so critical in business. And I'd say it's funny you said that, Craig, because we were just talking about this in our leadership meeting, was like, oh man, like we have all these vertical opportunities that we should be scaling, because the cost to get a lead into the funnel costs X dollars. So what is the lifetime value of that customer? So in business, you're always looking at what is your cost per acquisition and then your lifetime value of that customer. You always want cost per acquisition to be small and lifetime value to be super big, right? And so if you can provide good service, and my motto is like, I want to provide people with overwhelmingly value. Like if they come to us, whether it's for our coaching program all the way up to our pro services partnership program, I want them to walk away being like, there's so much value. The reason why I stopped working with them is it's too much value. Like that's like, if they ever want to stop, it's because and we've had that before, which is why I bring that up, where we've had some clients who are like, hey, this is too many deals. Like I need to pull back a little bit. Like I can't process all this information. So like, that's one of our, I guess, faults on that end. But, anyhow, yeah, I want to provide overwhelming value, because then that means that there is some monetization ability. And then if we can get that monetization at scale as a business, we can be even more successful.
Awesome, man. Dude, this is some good stuff. And just to kind of recap, right, we're kind of getting in towards the end here. You kind of started out buying like almost like a house hack, low percent down, even though you kind of didn't live there. We'll still call it a house hack because it was low percent down. You're renting it by the room, for all intents and purposes, house hack. Couldn't find any deals. Started a wholesaling company, scaled it up to now having other people wholesale, and now you're kind of building this behemoth of like a wholesaling as a service company, which I think is just, it's a super linear, like not linear, it's exponential in terms of where you're at, but like it's just super easy to follow story, which I love. You weren't kind of all over the place. Allie, is there anything else you want to add before we head into the final part of the show?
On my end, I have no more questions. But yeah, Dan, before we head into the last segment of the show, do you have any parting words for the group?
Oh, I will say this, just like if you're listening and you're thinking about being in business or you're thinking about being in real estate, just remember to solve problems, because that's, if you look at our story and where I've come from, it was really always about solving either a problem for me or somebody else that turned into a business opportunity. I think the best business opportunities end up becoming problems that you're solving. And the reason why I wanted to get into business was because I want some financial independence. I want to control my financial situation and not have somebody else control it for me, because as we all know, it's so easily can be, your life can be controlled because somebody else has the purse strings. And if you can hold those purse strings, you have just a much more peace of mind.
Love that. Dan, thanks so much. We're going to head into the final part of our show, which we call our
The
Final Four.
Boom.
Nice.
Will kick us off, starting with, what are you currently reading right now, Dan?
Oh my God, this is embarrassing. I'm not reading anything right now. Let me see. Hold on. I do have a book on my list. What was I going to read? Doesn't matter. I don't read. And I'll tell you why. Because I used to read like all the books. You can kind of see I got a little bit of my teeny stack over there of books that I have read and do. But like for me, I look at it as like, what is my best use of time? Reading's great. Obviously, it's a good thing. And right now, where I'm at in business, as I've talked about this whole time, we're trying to scale a business and try to do something new. My reading actually tends to be like, how do I do this? How do I, like, what's a good example? Right now, we're talking about scaling our hard money business. I'm reading that. Like, that's what I'm figuring out, Googling online, meeting with lawyers, reading documentation on what I need to do to not go to jail when I'm taking out other people's money. So I'm being very tactical in my approach of what I'm reading, just because of a time thing.
Yeah, there gets to a point too where, like, if you're so into a certain niche, all the books say the same. You're really not getting much else from a book. Like, I haven't really read many real estate books at all recently, because it's just like, I don't want to say I know it all, but I kind of know it all in my space that I care to venture into. And so time is much better spent learning something new or actually just doing the thing. All right, Dan, my question now is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I would say probably, I can't even remember who told me this. This was like early on in my career. I was probably like 19 or 20. And somebody just, I might even younger than that, basically shared, I'm going to use this word, consistency. In other words, basically, hey, as long as you can show up every day and like put in the effort, like working hard is like, it's an honest day's work is still something to be proud of. And showing up every day and doing that honest day's work is where how you're gonna reach your goals. So if I was gonna sum it all up into one word, I'm paraphrasing it terribly, it would just be consistency and showing up every day. Because all too often you hear in today's media, like, the 4-Hour Work Week, which is a great book, by the way. People are like, I just want to do as little effort as possible for the highest output, which is awesome. And that's like my goal, is like, as far as like, how do I get to that financial situation where I can make the decision on the amount of output I want? But to get there, I don't know that there's a way around putting out hard work. Like maybe the lottery, you could win that, and that's not hard work. I don't know, but you still got to show up every day and consistently buy tickets. So that, was probably the best piece of advice I got when I was younger, because it really ingrained into me that having a strong work ethic can take you a long ways no matter what you do.
Completely agree. What is your why? Why are you doing all this, business after business, and you keep on going?
Yeah. My why is this is so hard, and I'm still like working through this mentally, is like, I want to be able to do what I want when I want to do it. And what that really ultimately, as I dug into that, what that really ultimately meant was, I wanted, to my comment earlier, I want to be able to control my destiny. And one of the most liberating things in my life has been to learn how to make money on my own without having to have somebody give me direction to make money, or leverage somebody else's skills or somebody else's business to make money. I can truly go out and the reason why that matters is because if you can learn how to make money yourself, like, you can do anything, right? You just have to take those right steps to make as much money, as much wealth as you want, to do the things you want to do when you want it. So I would say, yeah, do what I want when I want to do it, but deeper, I want to be able to control my destiny and like feel that satisfaction and that comfort, because I grew up humble beginnings, like many of us, didn't have a lot of money. And so that was my goal. My thought was like, wealth breeds happiness. It doesn't, but it definitely makes it easier to have experiences that make you happy.
Totally. Love that, Dan. Okay. This is a fourth and final question. This one might be a little hard. What secret conspiracy would you like to actually start letting other people know?
I'm going to share this with you. And Allie, I hope you get this one. So a lot of people think, this is my belief from a conspiracy standpoint. Now, I'm going to preface this with, I do think there are some level of conspiracies within the government. There's always going to be when there's power and money involved. But a lot of people give the government way too much credit for things that are going on that really aren't. Because what I've found with a lot of the government is they're not smart enough to make a lot of these conspiracies actually happen without somebody saying something. Because, I mean, all too often, someone's going to say something, especially if it involves the military, because, you know, we like to talk and we like to smoke and joke kind of thing. And so it'd be really hard to get through a conspiracy if you included like a unit of dudes from the army. Like, it just wouldn't happen.
Yeah, completely agree with that.
Some guy would be in the bar trying to brag up to some lady that he was part of this like secret mission to wherever, and then it'd get out. So it's hard to keep secrets with, especially if it involves the military. That's my conspiracy. Maybe it's a conspiracy buster, but whatever.
So your conspiracy is that the government is way too dumb to actually carry out through any of these things. Like the conspiracy people give the government way too much credit, basically.
100%. There you go.
All right. Awesome, Dan. Love it. Dan, where can people find out more about you if they want to hear your stuff? You mentioned your Collecting Keys podcast. Anywhere else?
Yeah, hit me up. I'm pretty active on Instagram. I'm actually starting to grow that platform. I haven't been a social media guru in the past, but I'm focusing on that lately. So you can hit me up at InvestorMan Dan on Instagram, Dan Austin on Facebook. Those are probably the two platforms that'd be easiest to get a hold of me. You can always go to collectingkeys.com to check out the podcast. We have, I think, is a pretty good show. We're the anti-real estate podcast, where we talk about the good and the bad and all things in between, and talk a lot about business and scaling a business. So we have a lot of fun with it, but those are probably the two best places to get me.
Cool. Dan, thanks so much for coming on, man. It's been a pleasure. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you very soon. Maybe up in Sandpoint in a month or so.
I hope so.
Yeah, I'll be there. You going?
I am. Yeah, that's my plan. I'll be there.
All right. Awesome, man. We're looking forward to seeing you.
It's awesome meeting you, Dan. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, likewise, Allie.
And that was Big Dan Energy, Dan Austin. What do you think of BDE?
I loved his story, and Dan's great. Dan's that was an awesome story. I like how he got started, and how, well, I do want to preface, or rather, I guess this is the epilogue, that in no way does this show condone any sort of like mortgage fraud. If you are going to buy an owner-occupied loan, move into it. But him telling us about his story and his progression and how he's helping the same people in multiple ways is amazing. And I feel like Dan's the type of guy that's never going to, turn that off. He's always going to be helping other people.
Totally. Yeah, that's the thing that Dan and his partner Mike too. I actually knew Mike first, but we got to get Mike on the show. They're just like such wonderful humans first. Like they would preserve a relationship over any dollar amount, right? Like they're really not after the money. They're just trying to provide value for people. And when they provide value for people, of course they're going to get paid for it, and then that allows them to provide value for themselves and their family. So like really, like everything they're doing is really for other people, which I just think is so amazing and so glorious. And it's funny, I was doing the math. He said he had a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and his properties are 6 and 7 years old. So he actually bought his properties for his kids much before his kids were even born. And so I think that's a great thing too. So even, you guys listening, right? Like if you don't have kids yet and you're planning to have kids, that could be an option. Like what you're buying now could be your kid's college fund, right? I never thought about that, but I'm like, oh, sweet. Maybe I bought my future kid's college fund like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, I guess, Allie, anything else you want to add before we head off for the week?
Yeah, I really liked his message of consistency. Like at the end of the day, and I feel like I read this quote somewhere too, but pretty much consistency will beat confidence. And and I'm not in any way saying that you can just go out and not know anything about the field that you're in and, win. But over time, you will pick up the do's and the don'ts. But overall, if you just continue showing up, just doing something every single day that moves the needle, you will succeed.
Totally. What's that saying? Look, if you get 1% better every day, at the end of a year, you'll be 37 times better than where you were a year prior. Like if you think about that, that's nuts. And so just shoot to get 1% better. And that's a whole nother thing. But before we head off for the week, you guys are 1% better for listening all the way through. And if you want to make this show 1% better, please leave us a rating, a review. Let us know how you're doing. Give us a follow on Instagram. I'm the Fi Guy. Allie is Allie the Agent. And Allie, we will see you all next week.
Till next week.
That's it for this episode of Investify. We hope that these nuggets of real estate wisdom lead to more savvy financial planning and a clearer path towards financial freedom. For more content like this, subscribe to the show at investify.com. Don't forget to leave a rating and share it with your friends. Together, we can transform more real estate newbies into successful and clever investors. Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next one.